And we have a question here on Facebook from Craig. He says, am I right that there are no female angels?
Yes, you are right, Craig. Angels are spiritual entities, not physical ones, and female is a biological description of gender. I know that's going to get us kicked off YouTube and Facebook, but here I am trying to be Micaiah. When we're talking about this, there's two passages people will go to that would suggest it. The first is in Zechariah 5, and the other is in Revelation chapter 9. The problem is both contexts are talking about demons, if you take the Zechariah passage to not just be a symbolic vision. This is Zechariah 5 and verse 5. The angel who was talking with him came out and said to him, lift up your eyes now, what is it that you see goes forth? And he said, what is it? And he said, it's a basket going forth. And it says, this is their resemblance throughout the earth. There's a lead disc lifted up, and this is a woman sitting inside the basket. Then he said, this is wickedness. And he thrust her down into the basket, threw the lead covering over its mouth. He raised his eyes and looked, and there were two women coming with the wind in their wings, for they had wings like the wings of a stork. And then they carried the basket away. And it goes on to describe this is the Babylonian captivity. Now, what's interesting about storks is that among the Levitical law, they're of the sort of birds you don't want to eat. They were unclean creatures.
Right.
So commentators, if you were to say that this isn't just symbols, this is an actual spiritual phenomenon, which I don't necessarily agree with, but these pictures of angels,
Could be, but,
women
yeah.
with stork-like wings, those are unclean animals, and you have to follow the symbol to its logical end. If those are ungodly things or things for not God's people, that's not a good thing.
And the woman who's in the basket is literally labeled wickedness.
Yeah, so if there's an associated feature, that's not helpful. The second is in Revelation 9, where we're described the fifth trumpet judgment, where locusts are sent on the earth coming out of the abyss, and it says they had hair like women's hair. Now, I've seen not only people, but also musicians and also friends who had long hair like women's hair, and from John's sensibilities, that is a female, a feminine characteristic. It doesn't mean that it's a description of their biology or chromosomes. So it's a lot of inference as far as there being female angels in this. What's conclusive about angels is A, they're spiritual beings, and B, the concept of female is introduced to creation for the purpose of what? In Genesis 2, to be fruitful and multiply. Angels don't do that. In Matthew chapter 22 and verse 30, Jesus clarifies that in the glorified state we'll be like the angels that are neither married nor given in marriage. So there's no, boys and girls club of the heavenly host, if you will. And what's also important to note is that the only angels we're told about, demons apart, righteous angels. The first is Michael, which we're never given a physical description of. The Jewish traditions have some attempts, but that's all well and good. The second is Gabriel, who is described repeatedly in the book of Daniel and in the first chapter of the book of Luke as a man, meaning not that he was a human, but that he looked like a man in his appearances to the people who saw him. The man Gabriel is how he's introduced in Daniel, so not very subtle. It's not the woman.
Yeah.
So emphasize that point. The only angel we're given an actual description of is Gabriel, and he's described as a man, not because that's his gender, but because that's how he appeared. We're given allusions and proof texts in these side sources, but none of them are either A, literal, or B, if you do take them literally, or in a spiritual sense, referring to actual entities, they're not good things, and I'd be more gracious to the fair sex in saying I think that's just not a thing. And of course, the purpose of there being a female human being is, of course, for procreation, which angels don't. So that's why I'd say, no, Greg, you're right. There are no female angels.
Yeah, the vast majority, the only thing I throw in here in this world where everyone's obsessed with pronouns is the pronouns that are used to describe angels are pretty much across the board, with the exceptions you've mentioned, masculine. Does that mean that they are masculine in the same sense that we are? No, because of the reasons that you've elucidated, Sean. But when Daniel saw Gabriel and he said he has an appearance as a man, that was something that Daniel could obviously relate to.
He was real shiny.
Yeah. Does it mean that there aren't those who manifest themselves in the sense of a woman? We don't know. We simply don't know. The closest that comes to it is that passage in Zechariah, and that's so iffy because of the reasons that you've mentioned. I certainly wouldn't want to build doctrine on that. I think the kicker just goes back to what you mentioned in Matthew 23, that in the resurrection, those who are part of it neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like the angels of God in heaven. There's something that transcends, in a sense, what we understand as our definitions of gender. That'll be going on in heaven.
It's Matthew 23.
Yeah, Matthew 22.
22, verse
22
30.
and verse 30. Yeah.
That comes up a lot with the Nephilim question, so it's ingrained in here.